Like, subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos from PH and Learn. For more videos, download our app from the Play Store.
Hello everyone, welcome to the HTML and CSS tutorial by PH and Technology Private Limited. So in the previous tutorial we had created a table. Through that we had displayed the details of our education. Now what have I done is I have increased the rows and columns of that particular table, and also I have used a pseudo class selector over here. Now you can see that the coloring of the rows is alternate. Like you can see the even rows are only colored, and I have done this using the pseudo class selector, that is the nth element. And in the bracket you can put you want that particular styling to be applied for even or for the odd childs of that particular thing. So you can see the code over here. You can see dot education, the row, nth child, even. If I add odd over here, what would happen? The particular styling would be applied to the odd rows of the particular education of the particular class. So I am going to refresh it, and you can see the odd classes have been painted on, or the styling has been applied to the odd rows of the table. Now you can see I have given some particular subsection padding to the education as well, and I have named it as .d1. That particular subsection is named as class d1. So I can use this particular class d1 whenever I want a subsection, whenever I am entering a subsection over here. So this was all about the education table and the pseudo class selector. Now let's just start with the skill bar. Now we are going to create a skill bar using the div tags. We are not going to use any kind of bootstrap property or anything. We are just going to create it using HTML and CSS. Now how are we going to create a skill bar? First of all, we are going to create a container, okay, using the div tag, and inside that we will again create a div in which we will give a particular width. Okay, the first container will store that width and display it as a bar, as a skill bar. Now let's just implement this idea and see how it looks. Okay, now first I have created the class. Okay, now first we will create a div, and we will name it as class equals to container, and since it is going to act as a container, okay, then we will need div class. Now here we are going to require the particular width to be different for each and everything, right? Since that particular division is going to require two types of styling. First would be the width, okay, the width would be different for every skills. And also the styling, like the color of that thing or that alignment, everything would be defined there. So rather than repeating this particular thing over and over again, we are going to give two classes. We are going to require two classes. And how are we going to do that? No, we are not going to declare two different divs over here. We are going to declare two class name inside one. Now how are we going to do this? Just like this is my first class name skill, and the second class name would be after the space. Now I can use skill and HTML both differently. Okay, so here it is. Now let me close this div, and I'm going to give it as I have 80% of HTML knowledge. Now I haven't defined that this is particular skill bar is for HTML. Okay, so I'm going to go inside and here, inside the container or outside the container, it's your choice. Okay, so I'm going to give here P, and I'm going to tell it as HTML. Okay, and I'm going to refresh it. Now it's going to come pretty plain since we haven't given the styling, right? It is going to act as a very plain division. Now we'll go in here and we'll first enter container. I'm sorry, the spelling is wrong. Okay, so container. So what will we give? First we'll define the width as 100%, and then we'll define the background color as white. Okay, Now this is the container. Now the second thing would be the skills. That's right. So we are not going to require too much of styling right now. You can style on your personal basis as much as to the core you want to. Okay. So skill HTML, I want this particular 80% to align in the right side. Text align right. Okay. And now comes the HTML. So I can define different colors over here. First, let me define background color as red. Now you can give a linear gradient over here and define different colors for every skill set over there. Or if you want the one same color for every skill set, what you can do is you can give the background color inside the skills. Okay. But I want different, so I have given red over here. Now I am defining the width as 80%. This is how much I want it to look. This is the inside skill bar. This is going to represent the bar. That's right. So I have saved it. Now let's just see for ourselves how it's going to look. Okay. So this is how it is looking. So I think we haven't defined the container as white. We have defined the container as background color white. So let's just save it again. So the width here does not have a semicolon, and that's why this particular property wasn't being applied. So I refreshed it and you can see it has appeared. Now you can give a particular margin, you can give a padding to all these things, and you can make it look good. You can also give a linear gradient over here. Now if you want these skills to be placed one by one below, you can do that. Okay. Or you can place them side by side using the table option, or you can use the another option, which is using div. Okay, you can create row and column. Now let's just see how we can do that. Okay, so I'm going to require 2 of these. Okay, but first let's just define the row and column. Okay, so I want them side by side, so I'm going to define div class equals to row, okay, and then I'm going to define div, again a div, and I'm going to define the column. So what am I doing here? I'm not looking forward to use the table tag here. Now why do people not prefer to use table tag? First of all, it can create a little bit of restrictions to you. Okay, and if you want, like, this particular row and column helps you define or make the changes to the code. Like, there are no restrictions to the width, to the height, or anything over here. So let's just define the column over here. So I have defined the column. So this is my first division. I'm going to cut this and paste it over here. And I'm going to require this particular, see, you can see this is the closing of the column div. Okay, now this can be pretty confusing at times. Okay, so you need to check it. You can see this particular thing, Sublime Text helps us define. Now this particular thing, div, is the closing tag of the row class. So I have saved it, and now you can see 2 of them, but there is no gap inside them, right? So we are going to define some row and column over here, some styling for them. Let's just start with column first. Okay, so first we are going to define the width. Okay, now the width would be 50%. Now why am I going to enter 50%? The reason is I want 2 columns, and if they take 100%, are they going to fit in there? No. So if I want 3 of them, I'm going to divide by 100 by 3. If I want 4, I will divide 100 by 4. That is the entire screen space. We are considering it as 100. Okay, so I have divided into 50%, and then I'm going to tell it to float in left. Now let's just see what happens. Okay, I've saved it. Let's refresh it. Now you can see that they are coming below. Now what's the reason? Let's just try and decrease their lengths. Okay, I think the issue here would be the length only. So let's just select them using the corner option, select an element. Okay, so let's just select them. Okay, I've selected them. Okay, I need the column over here. So let's just define the width a little less. Now why am I defining the width a little less? The reason is because we have given some padding over here and that is gonna directly affect it, right? So let's just define the width. I've copied it and I've pasted it here. Now you can see that the space isn't been defined. Even if I define the row, it is not going to affect it. Now what's the reason? The reason here is the row is going to act differently every time the screen changes, okay? So we are going to require a pseudo element selector over here. Now what are these pseudo element selectors going to do? These pseudo element selectors basically define the styling for a specific parts of the elements, like the paragraph's particular word, okay? We can do everything with this. Now if you have written a particular sentence and you want to write something after or before that, you can use pseudo element selectors over there. Okay, right now what I need is I need a space after every row, right? For that I am going to use my pseudo element selector. So I have gone in intro, I am going to enter row. Now to enter a pseudo element selector, we use two pseudo element selectors, we use 2 colons, okay? And after that comes the property, like after the rows, what do I want? I want some space, and for that I'm going to use content and I'm going to give double quotes, blank double quotes. In actual what happens is when you enter this and if you enter some text in here, so what will happen after that particular element or particular tag you have entered or the class, what will happen is automatically it will enter the content whatever you have written inside this. Now what do we need to define? We need to tell it that you need to display it as a table, and now we are going to use clear both. Now what does the clear both do? Now clear actually specifies that where does the overflowing or the floating is not allowed. So the clear here is going to define that both the sides floating is not going to be allowed. So what will happen? It would be in a specific area, that's right, or in a specific part. So I am going to refresh it. So let's just refresh it. I've saved it. Now you can see that the gap has been introduced. Now if you don't see any gap, you just can go inside this particular thing, the container, and define the width, lessen the width. Now what is happening is the width is overlapping between these two containers, these two rows. Okay, so this was how you create a skill bar. Now let's just meet in the next tutorial and start with the next section. Thank you. Until then, please explore and make your skill bar or this particular section as much attractive and as much styling you can use to the code. Thank you.
For more videos, download our app from the Play Store.